Hey everyone, DJ Alex here, and let me take you on a twisted journey into the neon-soaked nights of Las Vegas. If you think this city is all about poker chips and Elvis impersonators, strap in, because I'm about to unfold a tale that's as chilling as finding out your free hotel buffet was actually charged to your room at premium rates. So there I was, freshly landed in Sin City, with dreams bigger than the credit line at a high rollers table. I came packed with a suitcase full of hopes and a playlist ready to make even the most jaded clubber feel like it was their first rave. The plan? To carve out a name for myself among the legends who turn nightclubs into their personal kingdoms as soon as they touch the turntables. Sounds epic, right? Well, beneath the glitter, the reality was a neon-lit nightmare waiting to happen. Getting into the Vegas club scene is like trying to break into Fort Knox with a paperclip. It's all about who you know, and if your most influential contact is the guy handing out flyers for a timeshare, you're practically invisible. But I was determined not to let that stop me. I hustled, networked, and did every gig I could land. Birthday parties, bar mitzvahs, and even a retirement party where I'm pretty sure my beats nearly sent someone into early cardiac arrest. All par for the course, in the quest for DJ stardom. Finally, my break came. I landed a gig at one of the major hotel casinos, opening for DJs whose names light up marquees and Spotify playlists alike. There I was, the underdog, ready to unleash my tracks on the unsuspecting crowds who were more used to Spotify's top 40 than my carefully curated deep cuts. The first few nights were electric. I'd show up at the club around 9 p.m., set up my gear, and start spinning to a mostly empty room. But as the night grew older and the drinks flowed like the Bellagio fountains, the dance floor would fill up. By midnight, I'd have a decent crowd, all loosened up and ready to dance, blissfully unaware of who was warming them up for the main act. It was exhilarating. Here I was, a small-town guy in the big city, making tourists and high rollers move to my beats. For a few hours, I could pretend I was the headliner, the main reason everyone had shown up. They didn't care who I was, of course. To them, I was just background noise before the real stars took the stage. But in those moments, with the bass vibrating through the soles of my shoes, I felt like I could be one of the greats. As the night would wind down and the real stars took over, I'd slink off the stage. My moment of glory fizzled out like a poorly gambled last chip. The backstage was another world. A small, cramped space where the aura of sweat and ego was thicker than the smoke lingering in the casino's no-limit poker room. I'd hang out, swap nods with the night's headliners, maybe exchange a few words if I was lucky. I met legends, from Diplo to Calvin Harris, and even caught a glimpse of celebrities like Justin Bieber living it up. It was surreal, rubbing elbows with people who wouldn't remember my name if it was printed on their paychecks. But that high soon wore off. The glitz faded each time I realized that these brief encounters backstage weren't stepping stones, but just ephemeral moments, as fleeting as the luck at the roulette wheel. It wasn't long before I grew tired of waiting for nods of approval that never meant anything. So, I decided to immerse myself directly in the pulse of the club, among the crowds, the chaos, and the $10 beers that tasted like they should have been free with a Yelp review. And that, my friends, was when I started noticing the weird shit. But that's a story for the next part. Stick around, like and subscribe, because what comes next is straight out of a Vegas horror show, minus the all-you-can-eat buffet. As my stint in the Vegas club scene unfolded, the gloss and glam began to peel away, revealing a layer of the bizarre that no amount of neon could brighten. The oddities began subtly, just a few quirks here and there, like finding a slot machine that actually pays out. But soon, these peculiarities escalated into a full-blown Twilight Zone episode, minus the soothing narration of Rod Serling. At first, I was just the new guy, the opener, a living, breathing Spotify playlist set to warm up the crowd. It was easy to miss the strange undercurrents when you're focused on not tripping over cables or accidentally playing Christmas tunes in July. However, as I settled into my role, the rose-colored glasses came off, and the weirdness came into focus. The security guys were the first red flag. They had this way of looking at me that was unnervingly intense, like I was a mystery they were trying to solve without actually asking any questions. I'd catch their stares, sharp and calculating, as if they were trying to x-ray my soul, or at least figure out if I was smuggling in cheap vodka to dodge the exorbitant bar prices. I joked to myself that maybe they were just confused by my music choice, wondering if the beats per minute were some secret code. Then there were the bartenders. If eyes were lasers, I'd have been sliced and diced into DJ confetti the way they watched me. These weren't the usual keep an eye on the drunken revelers glances. No, this was different. It was like they were tracking every move I made, from my uncool dad dance moves behind the decks to my trips to the bar to drown my sorrows in those criminally expensive beers. I tried brushing it off as club paranoia, the kind you get when the only lights you see for hours are strobes, and you've listened to bass drops long enough for it to become your new heartbeat. But then, things got weirder when I started interacting with the patrons, particularly the women. You know, typical club interactions, shouting conversations over the music, sharing drinks, discussing whether the DJ, me, had any idea what he was doing. Each time I'd chat with someone, they'd eventually disappear. Not in a, oh, look at the time, I gotta go kind of way. More like a magic trick. Now you see her, now you don't. Vanished. I'd turn around to grab a drink or cue up the next track and poof, she'd be gone. You'd think they were part of a secret clubber relocation program, or maybe there was a hidden trapdoor leading to a more exciting club. I tried not to let it get to me. After all, people lose people in clubs all the time, right? They wander off, find other friends, get distracted by shiny objects, or maybe even another DJ who actually knows what he's doing. But the pattern was too consistent, too bizarre to chalk up to mere club chaos. One night, just to test my theory, I spent time with a group, keeping count of every person, ensuring no one wandered off. Yet, as the night progressed, the group dwindled, members disappearing one by one until I was left nursing a drink, pondering over whether I had unwittingly become the protagonist in a Las Vegas-themed episode of The Leftovers. The realization hit me hard. I wasn't just imagining it. There was something off about these clubs, something sinister lurking beneath the beats and booze, and I was smack in the middle of it, spinning tracks and watching the club secrets dance away into the shadows. The glitter of Las Vegas can blind you to a lot of things, like questionable life choices and the actual cost of a poolside cabana. But as I settled deeper into the club scene, the glitter seemed to dull, replaced by a creeping shadow that slithered along the fringes of my gigs. I had gotten comfortable, maybe too comfortable, and that's when the real weirdness decided to take center stage. It started to feel like I was living in a loop. Each gig began the same: set up, start spinning, and watch the early birds trickle in. But as the night wore on, the script got freakier. I'd meet someone, usually a woman who didn't mind dancing to a set list decided by someone who thought dubstep was still cutting edge. We'd share laughs, scream over the music about how overrated quiet nights in were, and maybe, just maybe, share a drink. But here's where things spun out of the DJ booth of normalcy. Each of these women would vanish before the night was out. Let's talk about one night that sticks out like a sore thumb, that got slammed by a car door. I met Sarah, a brunette with a laugh that could make even my lamest track seem like a chart topper. We talked, danced, and I began to feel like maybe she'd stick around long enough to actually hear the best part of my playlist. Wrong. After stepping away to grab us another round of the casino's finest overpriced cocktails, I returned to find her gone. Not just stepped away or moved to another part of the dance floor, but disappeared into thin air. Poof. Gone. Like she'd been a figment of my imagination. But trust me, my imagination isn't that good. Now one might say, Alex, maybe they just weren't into your music, or your jokes, or your face. Fair enough. But when this pattern repeated itself with alarming regularity, I started to feel like I was part of some cosmic joke, where the punchline was always me, standing alone, holding 2 drinks, and questioning my life choices. As the occurrences piled up, So did my paranoia. I watched more closely, trying to catch the moment of their disappearances. Was there a secret door I didn't know about? Had Houdini's ghost taken up residence in Vegas, choosing my acquaintances for his disappearing acts? The questions were plenty, answers were none. One particular night I decided to experiment. I met Lisa, a tourist from somewhere where my accent seemed exotic. We hit it off, and keeping my new resolve, I kept one eye on her and one on my DJ booth. We danced, we laughed, and I made sure she was always in my line of sight. But even with my hawk-like vigilance, it happened again. A turn to adjust a track, a glance away, and she was gone, like a coin in a magician's palm. This bizarre game became a regular ordeal. Friends and flings, all vanishing without a goodbye, leaving me wondering if I should start attaching GPS trackers to everyone I meet. The club's atmosphere, once a haven of beats and bliss, morphed into a stage for my own personal thriller, where each night promised new mysteries, with clues as elusive as a winning streak in blackjack. What was happening? Was I losing it? Was the Vegas vibe finally getting to me, turning my nights into psychological puzzles that no amount of beat-dropping could solve? These questions haunted my gigs, turning each performance not just into a show of music, but a display of my growing unease as I spun tracks and tales of the vanished into the early morning mist. You know, there's a certain thrill to being the center of attention in Vegas. Spotlights, cheers, possibly a misguided marriage proposal from someone 3 sheets to the wind. But when you're the center of a mystery that makes less sense than a sober moment on the strip at 3 a.m., the thrill quickly turns into a chilling saga. That brings us to the night I met Emily, a girl with a smile that could light up the dimmest corner of any club and a laugh that suggested she found my playlist tolerably decent. We hit it off immediately, chatting about everything from the absurdity of paying $10 for a beer to whether aliens would bother visiting a planet obsessed with celebrity gossip. As the night's pulse throbbed around us, Emily suggested we refuel at the bar. A simple enough task, you might think. But remember, nothing was simple in my world anymore. As we made our way through the throngs of dancing bodies, a strange sense of foreboding crept up my spine. It was becoming a familiar feeling, like a recurring bad dream where you show up to spin and realize you've forgotten your music and your pants. We finally reached the bar, which was bustling with the usual scene of revelers waving their credit cards like flags of surrender to outrageous drink prices. We queued up, and that's when the deja vu hit me like a bass drop. The bartender, a woman with an intense gaze that could probably curdle milk, looked directly at Emily, then subtly touched her earpiece as if she was adjusting it. But it wasn't subtle enough. I noticed, and my paranoia, fueled by past experiences, kicked into overdrive. I didn't hesitate. Grabbing Emily's wrist gently, I suggested we ditch the drinks and find a quieter spot. The urgency in my voice must have startled her, and as I glanced back to make sure we weren't being followed by the bartender or her imaginary secret service, it happened. Emily slipped from my grasp. In that split second, as I turned back to where she stood, she was gone, vanished, into thin air, like she had been a figment of my increasingly stressed imagination. But this wasn't imagination. This was real as the $10 beer in my hand that suddenly tasted more bitter than usual. The crowd seemed oblivious, swaying and bobbing to the beats, lost in their own world of nocturnal bliss. Meanwhile, I stood there, the cold realization sinking in that this pattern wasn't just odd, it was terrifying. I was in the middle of something bigger than a few unlucky nights out. This was Vegas, sure, but it was turning into my personal horror show, sans admission fee. Shaken, I tried to recompose myself. Maybe I needed a break, a moment to clear my head. I left the throng of the club behind and stepped out into the cooler air of the early morning. The neon lights of Vegas, which once seemed so inviting, now flickered like warning signs. The rest of the night was a blur, a mix of disjointed images and sounds that spun around me as if I were stuck on the world's slowest, saddest merry-go-round. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in my car, parked in the same spot where I'd left it earlier that evening. My head was pounding, my thoughts were scattered, and Emily was still missing. As the sun crept over the horizon, casting long shadows across the parking lot, I couldn't shake the eerie feeling that whatever was happening, it wasn't just about vanishing club-goers or strange looks from bartenders. It was about me. Somehow, someway, I was at the center of this twisted, nightmarish puzzle, and I needed to find out why before this DJ gig became my last. Waking up in your car with a hangover is one thing. Waking up with no memory of how you got there after a night of vanishing women and spooky bartenders is like the opening scene of a thriller where you scream at the protagonist, "Get out of there, dude!" But here I was, in my trusty old car that smelled vaguely of last week's fast food and this week's failures, trying to piece together the remnants of yet another bizarre night. The morning sun was already too bright, casting long, accusing shadows across the dashboard. I sat there, the after effects of the night's comped Jack and Cokes mingling with a deep, unsettling confusion. My gear was packed up neatly in the backseat, which was a small mercy. At least drunk me had the sensey to look after thousands of dollars worth of DJ equipment. Pity he hadn't taken better care of his sanity. As I tried to stabilize my swirling thoughts, the events of the previous night played back in my mind like a broken record. Emily's sudden disappearance, the bartender's covert earpiece touch, the heavy stares. It all spun a narrative so twisted, not even the best club lights could illuminate what was really going on. Had I stumbled into a Vegas version of the Twilight Zone? Was there a hidden camera somewhere, capturing my descent into paranoia? Or worse, was I just losing it? The silence of the car was suffocating, almost as suffocating as the cloud of mystery that seemed to envelop my life. I knew something was off, and not just off, like a DJ playing Christmas carols in July off, but seriously, concerningly off. I decided I needed answers, or at least I needed to talk to someone who wouldn't disappear mid-conversation. First things first, I checked my phone. No new messages, no calls, and thankfully, no mysterious apps appearing out of nowhere to further confuse me. I called a few DJ buddies who'd been around the block, guys who knew the Vegas scene inside and out. Their responses were a mix of skepticism and concern. "Alex, maybe you need a break," said one. "Or maybe you've just invented a new genre of horror, club noir," joked another. Not helpful, but at least they were consistent. None of them had experienced anything like what I was going through. With a sigh, I started the car and drove home, the city's shimmering facades watching me like silent, knowing spectators. Back at my apartment, I tried to unwind, to distance myself from the night. But the unease followed me, clinging like the smell of smoke after a long gig. I did the only thing that felt right. I started writing everything down, every detail, no matter how small or absurd it seemed. Maybe if I could see it all laid out, it would start to make sense. Or maybe I'd see just how deep the rabbit hole went. Days turned into weeks, and with no fresh leads or further incidents, the intensity of my experiences began to dull. Maybe it was all just stress, I thought. The pressure of making it in a city that chews up dreamers and spits them out on the regular. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it, that I was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. So I did what any self-respecting DJ in a plot twist would do. I kept digging, kept spinning, and kept my eyes wide open. To anyone listening to this, remember, Vegas isn't just a city of dreams and lights. It's a city with shadows, and sometimes those shadows whisper secrets meant only for the brave or the foolish. So tell me, have you ever seen something in the shadows? Drop a comment, share your story, and let's keep the conversation going. And hey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of the unexpected from the city that never sleeps. Stay tuned, stay alert, and most importantly, stay sane out there. Because in Vegas, the next surprise is just a heartbeat away.